In this video, I want to talk to you about the VST format, a little bit of history about it from when I've started. I didn't start from way at the beginning, but VST is a very, very special format which allows us as beat makers and essentially anyone who uses audio to use the VST format. And VST has really helped innovate this music production world. All right, so VST. So when we think about a VST, we most often think about, all plugins, okay? But there is VST and then there is also VSTi, all right? And later on, we're gonna get into VST2 and then there is VST3, okay? So before we get into it though, I do wanna give a huge shout out to Steinberg, okay? So if it wasn't for Steinberg, they created the VST format, okay, which allows these audio plugins to be used. It doesn't matter in what music program. They can also be used in video editors, okay? So that's why I always tell you guys to get a good set of VST plugins. That way you can keep using these high quality plugins wherever you go in the when you're working with audio. And so for me, I like FabFilter. So I've been able to use my FabFilter plugins to do this video for my voice, for the EQ compression. But when I make beats, I also can use those VST plugins, right? So powerful. Now I just want to bring a little clarity to VSTi. So I think like technically when it comes to, our generators, things like Silent One, Serum, Pigments, these are instruments, right? They're generators. And so that gets the I designation. But when it comes to VST, this is the term when we're talking about like reverbs, delays, EQs, compressors, stuff like that, okay? So yeah, if it wasn't for Steinberg, they created this open kind of format, VST, and it's really allowed the audio world to innovate huge. So besides the VST format, you guys will also see some other formats out there. There is something like RTAS, or I'll just go like AAX. All right, so like this is like I think to do with Pro Tools and stuff. There's also like AU for the audio units, but you can see that these formats are platform specific. Okay, so we have VST2, and so when I first started, we had 32-bit, okay, and we also had 64-bit. And so that was when I was starting. I first started around 2009, and most of my plugins were 32-bit. But what was happening is as computers got more powerful, they started to be a 64-bit architecture. So the limitation of the 32-bit is you can only use 4 gigabytes of RAM, whereas a 64-bit is like way more. So when I started making music, it was kind of like this pain period, pain growth period from going from 32 to 64-bit. But it's, good because that's just how it had to be to allow computers to be more powerful. But now I want to talk a little bit more about VST2. So there is the DLL format when you install a VST2 file. It installs this into your program files. On Windows, we have the X, and I'm going to do this in a different color. Okay. We have the x86, and we have just the regular program files. And so it's kind of annoying because it was because of the 32-bit and the 64-bit. So the x86, I believe, is the 32-bit, and the 64-bit is just the regular program files, okay? And so when we installed VST2 plugins, so it with an executable file, it installs this DLL file. It installs it into your program files, and by default, it's asking to install it into VST plugins, and the folder is written just like this with a capital V and a capital P, and it would be in either program files just by itself or program files x86. And again, the differences between regular program files is the 64-bit and the x86 is the 32-bit. Okay, so again, we are pulling away from the 32-bit. That's awesome. I think Windows 11 is only 64-bit. Again, just more performance. But the nice thing about VST2 is that we were able to install this DLL file, okay? And so I'll do it like this. So it's actually DLL, right? But it's in lowercase. So the DLL file, we were able to bring that wherever we want. And for myself, I created just like it's a music folder, okay? And then inside my music folder, I'd have like a sounds folder. Now inside of sounds, I would have drum kits. I'll just go drum K for drum kits. And then we also had VST, okay? Or sorry, this is what I do. So I have a music production folder. I created a folder within there called sounds. Drum kits are nice and easy. I just go by vendor. In VST, they're a little bit more technical because, again, we are installing an executable file, which I'll talk a little bit more in a second here. So we have VST, and inside of VST, I would create a folder for each company, something like FabFilter or Leonard Digital if you're with South One, or stuff like that. So we have our DLL file when we install a VST2 through an executable. Now, I do suggest keeping your executable file around, okay? Store it inside that same file when you're installing your VST. I also recommend storing your license very close by there, because if you ever have to reformat your computer, or if you buy a new computer and you want to upgrade, I promise you, if you keep your executable file around with the license in a folder like this, so your music production, sounds, in addition to sounds, I would also have like my projects and all that kind of stuff. So one folder for all music keeps things really easy. In your VST, let's say FabFilter. So I'd create a folder called FabFilter. I'd make sure to have this executable file in there. The DLL is in there. And then within FL Studio, you can search for this folder, right? So FL Studio would search in here and it would pull all your DLL files. Now, what has happened is VST3 has come in, okay? So the difference between VST3, I'm not going to get too much into it because a lot of the changes are more for audio plugin developers, allowing them to do more powerful things, and then allows us as the user to benefit from that. One benefit the VST3 often allows us to do in FL Studio is right-click in the plugin and access it like a normal plugin, because there is a difference between an FL Studio native plugin to a VST. So if you purchase FL Studio, a lot of their stock plugins are their native format. You won't be able to get into like the gear cog, but you'll also notice on their website, you can purchase some of their plugins, something like Gross Beat. If you want to use it in a different music program, you actually get it into a VST format, okay? What I want to say here though is VST3, it has VST3 for its format, whereas VST2 is DLL. Now, in addition to this, a VST, so within program files, you will also have a folder in there called your common files, okay? Again, in both. So you will have that in the regular program files and in the x86 version of program files. You're going to have a common files folder, okay? Within common files, you will go to the VST3 folder, and then you will see all of these VST3s installed. So what I'm trying to say is when you install them within FL Studio, I believe they have to be in this common files VST3 folder. So you don't really get the flexibility of being able to put this DLL file wherever you want in VST2. However, I do suggest always keeping that executable file, exe file. It's your, if you're going to install the plugin, keep this in the folder. So if it goes VST, so it'd be like VST, let's say we have FabFilter. Okay, I'll just go Fab. So this executable file should be in there, and this allows me to back up the computer really easy, upgrade, okay? So again, that's just a little walkthrough of a VST. So the biggest thing I do want to say so that you don't get carried away with VSTs is that VST, again, it doesn't just apply to your music program when you're making beats. It also applies to our video editors, essentially anywhere where we can use audio. We can add on or plug in these VSTs into the music program to manipulate audio. Now, because VSTs are so easily accessible, my personal suggestion to you, again, is to select good plugins that you like very well, that you can use no matter where you're going when you're working with audio, whether it is editing videos like this video you're watching. Again, I use FabFilter plugins to edit my voice. Or if I'm making beats, again, I can use my FabFilter plugins to use EQ and compression when I'm mixing. So you might ask your question, well, should I install a VST2 and a VST3? Well, the question is to you is, are you using a video editor and making beats? Because just in FL Studio, you can get away with just the VST3 version, because when you install with that executable file, it'll pop up, and many times it'll ask you, do you want to install, the VST? Do you want to install RTAS, ASX, or AAX? It'll ask you all these different formats, right? And so essentially, all you need to do is just install the VST3 format if you're just making beats and mixing inside of a DAW. If you are using a video editor as well, then you can use both. And in my opinion, I would use the VST3 in FL Studio because it allows me to right click on the plugin and use it as a normal plugin. And the VST2, I would use in my video editor. All right. And again, making sure that we are installing the 64-bit, because sometimes when you install the executable, it'll say, do you want to install the 32-bit version, the 64-bit version? So again, it's just kind of growth pains. But honestly, VST as well as MIDI, they have really grown well in the audio industry, and it's a really cohesive growth that all companies are able to benefit from. And it's really good to see something like that, because many times industries are really broken sometimes. Sometimes one thing doesn't talk good with another thing. And when it comes to MIDI and when it comes to VST, they're pretty solid formats, okay? Any company can use VST. We just add them into our music program and we're good to go. Again, you can get really carried away by getting too many VSTs. And I also warn you guys often, be careful using new VSTs that you don't know very well on your serious projects, because once you use them, you have to keep them around, okay? You guys can watch my other video on that about selecting the right plugins as a producer. So if you would like more information on VSTs, you can come to my website. You can use the search up here or the search right there. Just type in VST. And I wrote an article on this topic about VSTs, but this video is for this. What is a VST, okay? You can click into it and you can read more about what is a VST and more information. Again, so a VST effect is something like an EQ or a reverb, and a VSTi is something like Flex or Pigments or Silent One or Serum or any of those other kind of popular instruments. These are what we use to generate sound. So if you guys have any questions about learning FL Studio, again, feel free to visit the website. There's tons of training. I have courses, books, all that kind of stuff. And if you want to start slow, you can download my free book. It's called 5 Keys to a Successful Beat. Just go to itsgratuitous.com/5 keys. So I hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you in the next video.